My name is Jake, and this happened when I was in the 11th grade. Even now, whenever I hear an emergency alarm echo through a school hallway, my heart starts racing. Why? Because one ordinary Tuesday, I wasn't just trapped inside a school during a lockdown. It was only one door away from the man the police were desperately searching for, and at the time, I had absolutely no idea. It started like any other Tuesday morning. The sky was gray, and it looked like it might rain at any moment. Nothing felt unusual. First period was English. Second period was history. Both classes were so boring that half the students were secretly scrolling through their phones. Lunch was only one class away. My best friend, Ethan, and I had already decided we were getting pizza from the cafeteria. We were joking around as we walked toward the science lab. The bell rang. We stepped inside the classroom. Miss Carter was taking attendance while everyone found their seats. I dropped my backpack next to the last desk in the back row and sat down. Everything felt completely normal until the classroom speakers suddenly crackled. It wasn't the usual announcement sound. It was louder, messier, almost like someone had grabbed the microphone in a hurry. The entire class went silent. Then, Principal Harris's voice came over the speaker. But something was wrong. He always sounded calm, confident, professional. This time, he sounded terrified. Attention all students and staff. This is not a drill. Initiate lockdown immediately. For about 2 seconds, nobody moved. I think everyone assumed it was another practice drill, but the second I looked at Miss Carter, I knew it wasn't. The color had completely drained from her face. Without saying another word, she rushed to the classroom door. She locked it, turned off every light, pulled the blackout curtain over the window. Then she looked at all of us and whispered, "Everybody now." Back corner. Entire class scrambled toward the back of the science lab. Large chemical storage cabinets were lined up. Against the wall, we squeezed behind them. Sitting shoulder to shoulder on the cold floor, nobody spoke. Nobody even breathed loudly. The room was completely silent. A few seconds later, my phone vibrate. But it was a text from my mom. "Are you okay?" I started typing a reply. Before I could hit send, Miss Carter looked directly at me. She didn't say a word. She simply shook her head. I immediately silenced my phone and slipped it back into my pocket. 2 minutes passed, then 5, then 10. Nobody knew what was happening outside. The hallway remained completely silent. Then I heard footsteps, thump, thump, slow, heavy, walking straight toward our classroom. Each step sounded closer than the last. My heart was pounding so hard I was sure Ethan could hear it. The footsteps stopped right outside our door. The entire room froze. Then the doorknob slowly moved. Click. Once. Then, again, click. I held my breath. Nothing happened. For a moment, I thought whoever it was had walked away. Then, I noticed something beneath the door. A shadow. Someone was standing perfectly still on the other side. Not moving, not speaking, just standing. There 10 seconds passed, 20, 30, it felt like whoever was outside already knew we were hiding. Inside, then a calm voice quietly said, "I know you're in there." Chill ran down my spine. It wasn't the words that terrified me. It was how calm he sounded, like he wasn't angry, like he wasn't in a hurry, almost like he was smiling at that exact moment. A girl hiding behind us accidentally let out a small hiccup. Everyone turned toward her. The shadow outside stopped moving. The hallway became completely Silent then. The doorknob slowly turned. One more time. Someone was looking for us. The doorknob slowly turned. Click. This time, whoever was outside didn't try to force the door open. He simply pressed the handle down, held it there for a few seconds, then let go. The classroom was completely frozen. I looked over at Ethan. His face had turned pale. Miss Carter raised one finger to her lips. Nobody made a sound. The shadow under the door was still there. 5 seconds. 10, 15. It felt like the man outside was listening to our breathing. Then, in the same calm voice, he spoke again. You can stay quiet. But eventually, someone always makes a mistake. Every hair on my arm stood up. There was no anger in his voice, no panic. He sounded patient, like he knew he had all the time in the world. A few moments later, the footsteps finally moved away. Slowly, one step at a time. We waited, listening as they stopped outside the classroom next to ours. Click, the sound of another doorknob. Then bang. A loud crash echoed through the hallway. Someone screamed. Another crash. Then complete silence. Nobody in our classroom dared to move. A few seconds later, my phone vibrated again. I nearly dropped it. It wasn't my mom this time. It was a text from Ethan. I looked over. He was sitting less than 3 feet away from me. The message only said 4 words. Jake, look outside. I slowly turned toward the small emergency window at the back of the science lab. A tiny gap in the blackout. Curtain let me peek outside. What I saw made my stomach drop. The entire parking lot was filled with police cars, SWAT trucks, ambulances, officers carrying rifles. A police helicopter circled above the school. That's when I realized this wasn't just another lockdown. The entire building had been surrounded. Suddenly, the classroom speaker crackled back to life. Static filled the room. Then a man's voice shouted, "No, don't." The transmission cut off instantly. Silence. Every student stared at the speaker. Miss Carter rushed over and unplugged it from the wall. For the first time, I saw fear in her eyes. Real fear. Then, we heard people running through the hallway. Not one person. Several fast footsteps, as if they were running for their lives. But behind them, there was another set of footsteps. Only one person. Walking, slowly, calmly, never speeding up, never stopping. Then bang. A loud sound echoed through the hallway. This wasn't a locker. It sounded exactly like a gunshot. A girl near the back of the room started crying. Her friend quickly covered her mouth before she could make another sound. Everyone was shaking. Some students were silently praying. Others couldn't stop crying. Then, from somewhere farther down the hallway, a teenage boy screamed, "Help me." The scream lasted only a second, then nothing. The silence that followed was somehow even worse. I looked at Ethan. His lips were trembling. He leaned closer and whispered, "Jake, something feels really wrong." Before I could answer, the fire alarm suddenly went off. Beep, beep, beep. Bright red emergency lights began flashing outside the classroom. The red glow slipped under the door, painting the entire floor crimson. Then, I noticed something. A pair of shoes stopped directly outside our classroom. I held my breath. A second shadow slowly appeared beside the first one. There were now 2 people standing outside our door. To be continued. The wrong person, my hands were shaking. I couldn't stop staring at the 2 shadows. Beneath the classroom door, neither of them moved. Neither of them spoke. The only sound in the room was the fire alarm echoing through the hallway. Beep, beep, beep. Looked at Ethan, he slowly shook his head. Neither of us had any idea who was standing outside. Then, one of the shadows suddenly disappeared. The other one stayed. A second later, a loud voice shouted from the hallway, "Police, drop the weapon!" Immediately, 3 gunshots exploded through the hallway. Bang. Bang, bang. Several students screamed Miss Carter quickly, dropped to the floor and motioned for everyone to stay down. Nobody moved. Nobody even breathed then. The hallway went silent. Again, no footsteps, no voices, nothing almost. 2 full minutes passed, then my phone vibrated. I froze. This time, it wasn't my mom. It wasn't. Ethan, it was an unknown number. The message read, "Don't trust your teacher." I stared at the screen. My heart nearly stopped. I slowly looked up at Miss Carter. She was standing near the classroom door. Staring through the small window, incomplete, silence. I wanted to believe the message was fake. But then, Miss Carter's phone. VIB re. She pulled it out, looked at the screen, and the color instantly drained from her face. She quickly locked it before anyone else could see it. But I caught 2 words before the screen went dark. He found YOU. My stomach dropped. Who had found who? And why did it seem like she already knew what was happening? Before I could think about it any longer, someone started pounding on the classroom door. Bang. Bang, bang. The entire room jumped. Then came a familiar voice. "It's Principal Harris. Open the door." Every student looked toward Miss Carter. She didn't move. The voice came again, this time louder. "Miss Carter, it's safe. Open the door." Several students started crying. One boy whispered, "That's the principal." But Miss Carter slowly backed away from the door. She looked terrified. Then she whispered something I'll never forget. "That is not Principal Harris." The room went completely silent. Outside, the pounding stopped. A few seconds later, the voice returned. Only this time, it sounded different. Almost like someone was struggling to imitate him. "Miss Carter, open the door." Words sounded forced, broken, wrong. Then the voice disappeared. A few moments later, we heard slow footsteps walking away. For the first time in nearly an hour, everything became quiet. Too quiet then. A soft knock came from somewhere behind us. Knock. Every student turned around. The sound had come from the storage room at the back of the science lab, a room that had been locked since class started. Miss Carter stared at the door. Her face turned completely white. Another knock, knock. Then a weak voice came from inside. "Please, let me out." I felt my blood run cold because I recognized that voice. It was Principal Harris, but that couldn't be possible. We had just heard him outside the classroom, so who was trapped inside the storage room? And who had been standing outside our door? The storage room doorknob suddenly began to turn. Click, click, click. Then something slammed against the door from the inside. Bang. The lights flickered. Everyone screamed, and just as the door started to crack, the classroom door burst. Open to be continued. The truth I'll never forget. The classroom door burst open. 3 SWAT officers rushed inside with their rifles raised. "Police, stay where you are." Nobody moved. Nobody even breathed. One officer immediately stood between us and the storage room. Another carefully approached the door. The pounding from inside had stopped. The entire classroom was silent. The officer looked back at the rest of the team then, with one powerful kick. Crash. The storage room door flew open. Every student held their breath. The officer stormed inside. For a few seconds, nobody said a word. Then one of them called out, "Room's clear." Clear? That didn't make any sense. We had all heard someone inside. The voice, the knocking, the pounding. I slowly stood up and looked into the storage room. It was empty. Just shelves. Boxes of old science equipment, cleaning supplies, and an old portable school radio sitting on the floor. One of the officers walked over and picked it up. The radio suddenly crackled. Then, a familiar voice played. Through the speaker, "Please, let me out," was Principal. Harris, the officer, looked at the device, then pressed a button. The recording stopped. Someone had recorded the principal's voice and set it to play on repeat. The room went completely silent. Then another officer called everyone over. Near the back wall, hidden behind a stack of old boxes, was a small backpack. Inside it, they found a flashlight, extra batteries, a master keyring, zip ties, several floor plans of the school, and a black notebook. The officer slowly opened it. Every page contained handwritten notes, classroom numbers, teacher schedules, lunch periods, security, camera locations. It looked like someone had been planning this for months. Then he turned another page. My heart almost stopped. Written across the top was one word: Jake. My name. Right below it, someone had written, "Always sits in the back." Another line: "Science lab, room 220." Another: "Usually with Ethan." I couldn't breathe. Whoever had written this had been watching me. The officer looked at me. "Is your name Jake?" I slowly nodded. He immediately closed the notebook. "Nobody touches this." The notebook was placed into an evidence bag. About 20 minutes later, we were finally evacuated from the building. Outside, the parking lot looked like a war zone. Police, cars, ambulances, news helicopters, parents crying behind police tape. I spotted my mom running toward me. She hugged me so tightly I could barely breathe. Later that evening, the police released a statement. The suspect's name was Jeff Monroe. He had worked as a maintenance employee at our school nearly 15 years earlier before being fired, according to investigators. He blamed the school for ruining his life. For months, he had secretly entered the building after hours, learning the layout, watching routines, studying teachers, studying students. The notebook proved one thing. This wasn't random. He had chosen specific classrooms, specific teachers, specific students, and somehow, I was one of them. The school remained closed for nearly 2 weeks. When classes finally resumed, everything looked different. New cameras, new security, doors, armed officers at every entrance. Everyone tried to move on, but nobody really did. About 3 months later, I stayed after school too. Clean out my locker before winter break. The hallway was almost empty. As I reached for my backpack, I heard someone quietly say my name. "Jake." I spun around. Nobody. The hallway was completely empty. I laughed, nervously, trying to convince myself I was imagining things. Then I looked back inside my locker. There was a folded yellow sticky note sitting on top of my books. I was certain it hadn't been there a second earlier. My hand started shaking. I unfolded it. Only one sentence was written inside. "I told you. I wasn't the one you should be afraid of." Immediately looked around. The hallway was still empty. Police later confirmed that Jeff Monroe had been in custody ever since the lockdown. He couldn't have entered the school. He couldn't have left that note, so who did? I graduated the following year, but I never walked through those hallways without looking over my shoulder. Even now, years later, whenever I hear slow footsteps behind me, or someone quietly whispers my name, I turn around every single time, because some days you survive the lockdown, but the fear never leaves.